first of all, just to thank you all for coming. I can see the textile school in Brno. I can see Manuela from Austria. I can see the faces of the Hungarian students that I remember very much from June. We've got Polish students involved. Manuela, who does who's been doing the filming of the testimonies. Danny, it's good to see you. And then from Geneva here, we have the international school as well, where some of the students are involved. And Vida, it's lovely to see you as well. Colourful as always from Norway. So I'm just going to share what we're going to go through today. And we will, first of all, I will just go through a little bit the school inputs, because it's been great to get all your inputs and just to encourage more, because this is making a museum with these school children, from 5 different countries. We got wonderful inputs in June, and I will just mention some of those. We'll then look at the teaching curriculum. This is the first one, so the first Zoom call, and it's around art. And then we'll go a little bit through, and hopefully you'll meet just personally some of the artists from this early 20th century who contributed to a very special culture in Europe, and then started from zero, many of them after the war, to help. If you save a life, you save the world entire. So they show a little bit that path, and Vida will explain a little bit how that will be one of the first exhibitions. We'll start it actually before the museum on the 30th of June next year, and then it will be installed when the museum opens in May 2025, to mark 80 years since the end of World War II. So it will then be a permanent part, but it will be shaped by you, because we don't know how it communicates to the next generation. So it is to get your inputs. So I'm now going to share this this presentation. Tell me if you can see the slides that we're doing. Can you now see them? Great.
Yes. Can you put it on the presenter mode?
Yeah.
On that.
Okay. So first of all, if you can remember the buildings in June, it was great to have the students there, and we have around 40 inputs from you into making a museum. And I'm just going to mention the first few. There's 40 of them, but that we are all trying to include as many as we can. And your teachers have the list of those inputs and the country they come from, and then the response. And we're also going to leave a space in the museum for all of your ideas as well, and this process of making a museum. So one of the first ones you say is keep half of the building as it is now. Keep the original state of the buildings, only renovate buildings, and the other half should be as it is now. That came from Hungary, and it came from Austria. And we will create, just beyond the first museum, a wilderness area, which will show the buildings as it is now. So we're trying to include that idea. The silver path, so you have a path which creates a real path outside to enter into the site. We're looking at being able to do that with a list of the names of the survivors, and that people can wander to open to nature, and the place that is calm, spacious, and that entrance piece is important. Factory machines, we're bringing a couple of the machines back into the exhibition space. We have one from the 1920s that came from the Czech and the Hungarian students. Details on the architecture, which we've given to the architects to use light and dark in the architecture. So start with a slightly claustrophobic entrance, which is dark, and then it opens out into light, and it should symbolize hope. And that, you'll see, that's what we're trying to do in the entrance. And then when you come into the warehouse, to show light and as that develops. Place of stones, a dedicated place where visitors can place their stones with memories. So we'll try and bring that into the wilderness area. Poems, art, songs. So you're hearing that a little bit today. It's a museum which has got to be lively, catch the ear and the eye, fill the museum with paintings, poems, art, and songs. That came from Slovakia. And Vida's got that. He's looking at the art. We're sharing some of the art today. We have some of the buttons. We have one of the pots here that was made by the Schindler's Jews. I'll show you that later. And there are a few objects that we think are important to put into the museum. Use black, white, and red. Again, from Slovakia, who have a very strong artistic input, I think. The museum should catch the eye from the start, use the colors of the film. And again, we are aiming to have the section which talks about the war and how difficult it was to save a life in black and white. And then the second section comes out with a kind of burst of color and a burst of art, and you'll see some of the art today. A place of emotions, where you can think and feel what you have seen. You get lost in your own mind. That was a great input. It was a francophone input. We got it from France, but we also did get it from Hungary and the Czech Republic. And you'll see in the design, there's a formal exhibition space. There's a theatre where you can see the film and the event. And then there's a much more relaxed coffee space where there'll be a place of emotions where it's where you can sit, you can absorb, and you can do some of the activities here. And then number 10 was not a boring museum. So that probably is the most difficult one. And we are really aiming for that. When we visit a museum, we don't want it to be boring when you read the same thing. We want it to be new. We want it to change, maybe even as the visitor goes through. And using stories, using media. That came from the Swiss, actually. That came from your students, and it came from the Czech students as well. And we will bring that in. So that's just as a little idea, and please do add to that list, because they are going to be built in. And the ideas, however big, however small, can come into the museum. Now, this is the contents of today. I'm just going to see if I can share this. Now, can you hear the music?
No, you need to share the sound.
Okay, just.
And also your voice is still really low quality. Maybe you have headphones or something that might help.
If you want to use one of yours, got a microphone.
You must talk towards the microphone.
Okay. Okay, it's fine.
It's not this time.
Stop there. And then share screen. Okay, tell me if you can hear now.
Yes.
I have a date at noon. Come soon.
This place has a really beautiful atmosphere. Like it's very peculiar, but it's nice. It's nice. It's quite unimaginable to think that everything happened in this one place. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's wonderful at the same time.
Yeah.
I stole sun and sing. Love is waiting. I have a camp.
It's unbelievable to stand on the ground where once Schindler stood, and like it feels unreal to be here.
It's an honor to be part of this whole experience and project. It's good to do this together with other like-minded students.
Yeah, and it feels that the stories that we heard are so close to us here.
Concentration camp date. I have a date at noon. Come soon. The day is...
We're from the neighborhood, so I'm from the village. They are from a nearby town. So It's a great experience, and we are interested into this place because we want a museum to be here. We really want it.
The sun is singing. My love is waiting.
The electric fence, am I dreaming? Everything is smiling.
It's really important to keep the feeling of this place because there's like an aura. It's like comes from the walls, like the feeling of depression. And I really want to keep that feeling.
I have a date at noon.
It's really crazy to somehow recreate that, but for the average viewer, the average person who decides to go to this place and to feel all these emotions, to feel what it's like to be, to walk around here, to experience the work, just like everything, every aspect of the life of living here as a Jew, as a survivor of the Holocaust.
Lover, don't be late. Lover, don't be late. Can love change everything? Can love change everything?
Finally, she giggles like a gun. She laughs like a mad woman.
This is the crossroad of Europe, basically. If you look at the ancient maps, this is where all cultures met. And therefore, it's the potential. And hopefully it will come back. And this is not only the, let's say, textile factory or something. No, it's the whole milieu. It's the whole atmosphere, what was here, the coexistence within these communities. I don't want to say with cultures, but these communities, which were so specific.
It's a great topic to learn about, and that this museum is going to be exciting to walk into and to experience.
Lover, don't be late. Can love change everything?
I think we are not 5 minutes, but 1 minute to 12 to save this place.
So thank you, everybody. And that just brings back a little bit the atmosphere in June. I'm now going to just pass over. We're going to do three things. We're just going to pass over to Gabby to do one slide on the teaching. So please continue to make your inputs to making a museum. And however small a group, the testimony activities that will be shown, if you could do those, feedback. And then we will go into the presentation from Vida. So let me just put the slides up again. So Gabby, do you want to maybe just give an introduction to the teaching activities, and then we'll move on to Vida. Over to you, Gabby.
Thank you. So throughout the year, every school group has the chance to pilot activities which are building on the Shoah Foundation's testimonies, and which testimonies are conducted with survivors of thanks to Schindler, so Schindler Jews. And many of the schools already piloted two of these activities. The first one connected to the film Schindler's List, and the second one about the role of Emily Schindler. In many schools, students themselves became the teachers and helped their peers. So there is a peer guiding activity in most of the schools, which is really fascinating, and we received very interesting feedback from children and their peers. And now we have our next event, which is happening now, starting from Zero exhibition and webinar call. Then in January, students will pilot the next activity about the role of the textile factory in Brynjanec throughout the 20th century. Then they will deal a little bit with resistance and the role of art in resistance, which builds on the story of Josef Bau, who was forging documents and helping to save a lot of Jews, together with Oskar Schindler and Emily Schindler. Then in March, they will learn about the second generation and how it landed on them, how they carry on the memory of the Holocaust. Then in April, there's a very interesting activity around an interactive testimony with Ben Ferencz. And then we will return in June to Brynjanec with those groups who were also displayed in the short video. And they have another task is that they're going to create posters about their learning that they have learned during the year. And they will bring it back to the museum, and that will remain there for anyone who will visit the location. And they will present their ideas to each other. So this is really briefly the learning during the year.
Great. No, thank you, and thank you to the students. So, however many, just if you can do those teaching activities, give us feedback. They're 45 minutes. If you want to reach a larger number of students in your school, just present the project. We have something simple on presenting the project, sharing the video, and getting people's ideas, because we will add to that list as we build them in. And that allows us to reach more people as we do this piece. So it's a mixture of in-person, and today we have the Zoom call where we will introduce Vida Hallen, who's our expert today. Vida Hallen's our advisor. He's the curator and editor for the museum and for the exhibition starting from zero. That will be in June and then be permanently in the museum. He earned his doctorate at Oxford on the first industrial designer, Christopher Dresner, and has worked as museum director, curator, and researcher at the National Museum in Oslo. He has curated numerous exhibitions around the world and published books and articles, notably on Otti Beja, who's one of the symbols of the museum. She's one of the finest textile designers, and we're trying to make some of her pieces. We have a carpet of hers actually in the room here. And she is one of the main artists in our exhibition. So Vida, maybe over to you on starting from zero, and tell me when you want me to change the slides. Over to you, Vida.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, good. Great to see you all, and remembering those lovely days in the summer. No, it's cold and snow here in Norway, and I have a cold too, so my voice is not so good. But anyhow, we're going to look into something fantastic, and that's all these four female artists that are probably some of the most avant-garde and advanced artists of the 20th century. And they have, in fact, inspired most of modern art to this day, because they managed to go away from all the historical models they used around 1900 and before 1920. They used very figurative models for their ornaments, and they managed to look into all this in a more abstract and more philosophical way. And of course, a museum is in a way, it's actually the definition, the Greek definition is the home of the muses of these artists. The soul and the ideas of these artists, that is the home, that is the museum. And therefore we would like to lift out these very important artists and look into how they form their life and their important art, which is still with us. And of course, their struggle to survive, which was also a very hard way in 1930s Germany. They had all been, except for Lucy Rie, who lived in Austria, the other three were at the Bauhaus School, which was the most advanced school in Europe for art, and which liberated their ideas. In fact, they had artists like Paul Klee, Vasily Kandinsky, Joseph Albers as their teachers. So evidently, the greatest artists of the century were there. And in a way, this formed their whole life. And in 1936, just after they had left Bauhaus, the German National Socialists decided to ban all non-Aryans from working in their country. So from that on, May 1936, all of them had to seek some new jobs around the world and start from zero somewhere else than in Germany. Otti Berger, she went all around to Zurich, to Zagreb, to Vienna, to Paris, to London, to Amsterdam, in order to get new jobs, since she could get no more new jobs in Germany. Evidently, she managed very well, as a matter of fact. She got new jobs in Amsterdam for 2-3 factories there, doing her textile designs. She did also in Zurich for Wohnbedarf, which is one of the greatest and most advanced interior decorating companies in Europe at the time. She did all their textiles. And for famous artists and designers like Marcel Breuer, who made the furniture there, and the Finnish artist Alvar Aalto, designer and architect, who did the furniture, and she did the textiles for all these furnitures. So in a way, we are now looking at some female artists that have not been so much focused on, because these famous architects, these male architects, came in a way, made a shadow for them, because they were so famous that they didn't think about who made the textiles on these important pieces of furniture, for example, or who made the textiles for all these fantastic new buildings in the functional style that we are still admiring today. No, they were usually female artists who did those, and they have not been focused on as they should in the history of art. Therefore, it's also important that we now take them out and show them to the public in a proper way, which we will do in this exhibition. Otti Berger and Annie Albers were contemporaries at the Bauhaus School, and Otti Berger did these fantastic textiles. This is the blanket for a child, probably for a bed, and this has been preserved in the Chemnitz Museum in Germany. So quite a few of her things are preserved in museums, luckily. And it's a jewel-like tapestry. Daniel has just been to see it, and he said it was jewel-like in colors, and it is indeed. And also the weaving is a fantastic weaving that brings out the luster and the color of these fibers, which is in fact mercerized cotton. So it's not a very particular fiber, but it's fantastically woven, and it's actually been rewoven now by our weavers in Bernonec, and they are making a replica which will be shown in the exhibition, which should be really great. And the other piece you see here up in the right corner is what we call weaving snow. She had an idea about how to weave the whiteness and the glitter of the winter into a tapestry and into a fabric, into a textile, which she has done here in this particular sample done for the Wohnbedarf company in Zurich. And this will also be rewoven now at Bernonec, so that we can show us a small piece in the exhibition, which should be exciting. She was a great skier. She did a lot of skiing up in the mountains, in the Schlesien mountains, and she loved skiing and outdoor life, and must have been a very vivacious lady. But unfortunately, she did actually not survive. She's one of those who did not survive, and she died in Auschwitz in probably 6th of July 1944 upon arrival there. So it's a sad story. Most of the other artists, they managed to survive and recreate themselves and start a new life, start from zero somewhere else, but Otti Berger did not. Therefore, it's also important for us to pinpoint her story. She needs to be focused on more than she's done before. And in the right-wing corner down there, you see the zebra fabric she did for also for Wohnbedarf, and it was used on Marcel Breuer's first chairs and Alvar Aalto's first chairs. And it's been used widely around the world, and it's still sold today in Alvar Aalto's company Artek in Helsinki in Finland, but with no designer mentioned. So in fact, this is her design, and she has been deprived of having her name attached to it, which she now will, since we have proved that she actually did this design properly. So it's a very interesting artist, this Artie Berger, and of course a highly eminent weaver who knew everything about the weaving techniques and what colors, what fabrics, how to use, and how to make different kind of fabrics. They were also acoustic things she did for large cinemas and big halls. She did acoustic textiles, which we probably will also be needing in the new museum in Vernonec. That's kind of acoustic thinking of a textile. And she did also interiors for textiles for big villas in Germany, and also for interiors of the aeroplanes. So in many ways, textiles have been everywhere in society, but also forgotten to a large degree. So let's see, Annie Albers was her good friend at Bauhaus. She actually visited Annie Albers' parents a lot. They lived in Berlin. Her parents belonged to a publisher family of Jewish origin, highly educated people, and Otti was actually a guest very often in Annie Albers' parents' home. So they were close friends, and Annie was slightly older, and she married Joseph Albers, who was one of the greatest teachers at the Bauhaus School. They had a wonderful life until they had to flee from Germany. They were forced to flee then in 1934 to the United States. College of Art, which is today regarded as the center of modernist thinking in the United States. So in many ways, because they had to flee from Germany and from Bauhaus, these artists actually made the American modernism look so interesting. They are the origin of the modernism in America, which we admire today. But to a large degree, Mies van der Rohe, who was the director of the school, he went there to do his architecture. So did Ludwig Hilbersheimer, who was Otti Albers' fiancé. He went to America. And luckily, she didn't make it. They wanted to get married in the States, and that she should work there with him and with Mies van der Rohe and with Moholy-Nagy in his art school. But she didn't make it out of Europe in the end, and was actually sent to Auschwitz then with her parents and her family. So it's a sad story. But a lot of her history has been revived now, and there are some more people doing research. So Annie Albers, anyhow, did a very great career actually in the States. She became one of the great grand dames of textile art in America. And also later on, she did prints, which you can see her on the right. She did prints for sale so that she could actually earn a lot of money on her prints. But her textiles are the most advanced. The one in the middle here is a recreation of one of her carpets, which we'll be showing in the exhibition. And she did a big mark on the history of art, Annie Albers. Yes, and then we have the wonderful Lucy Ree from Vienna, and she was educated there at the Kunstgewerbeschule and with a lot of famous artists that were part of the Wiener Werkstätte, which you may have heard of. And she, in fact, had to flee also in 1938, and she was so disappointed with her homeland, Austria, that she said she would never set her feet there again or never exhibit her art there ever. And that she never did. She went to London. She managed to get a studio there, which she kept all her life, just near Hyde Park Corner, in fact. And but of course she was a foreigner and not so easy in Great Britain either at that time. So she was not really accepted as a great artist. And to start with, she had to do these buttons to survive. She did ceramic buttons, and they were bought by lots of factories all around Britain who made coats and clothes and all other things that you need buttons for. And they are, in fact, small pieces of art themselves in wonderful ornaments, very abstract and very colorful. And we have quite a few of them, which we will show in the exhibition. And as a matter of fact, Issey Miyake was also very inspired by Lucy Rhee. They met and became friends, the big Japanese fashion designer, and he used some of her buttons in his fashion. So they reached a wider public even after she was dead, Lucy Rhee. She did the most advanced pottery in Europe at the time, and she is regarded as the greatest potter in Europe and the greatest ceramic artist of the 20th century. Has made a mark on everyone working with ceramics today. They know her name and they admire her work. So it will be great to show that. Daniel Laubier has a large collection of her pottery since she was a good friend of his grandmother. And he actually grew up partly with her. So that is a lovely story too. And Lily Reich has come in the shadow somehow of her more famous friend, Mies van der Rohe. They were a couple, they never married, but Mies van der Rohe was the big artist who did the Tugendhat Villa and many other famous buildings around the world, also in the United States, where he settled. He's a great name. But Lily Reich, she did the interiors. She was an interior decorator. She decided the colors, the furniture, the carpets and what have you, the curtains, etc. But she was never sort of in the big light as her partner, Mies van der Rohe, was. So we want to lift her now out of the shadow and show her and her great importance for Villa Tugendhat, because in fact she did the designs for the big white carpet here in front of the onyx wall, which you can see. The carpet which is there today is a bad copy, but now we are weaving a proper copy here in Bruneneck, which will be a great thing to show. With a lot of research done by Magdalena Droste on how she actually made these carpets and who made them for her and who was weaving, etc. A very interesting story which will be told about her work for Villa Tugendhat. In fact, she also wanted to go to the States and start from zero. She went to see Mies van der Rohe just after the war, but by then he had found a new lady friend, so it was in vain. She had to return, very disappointed, and died soon after in 1947. So it was a rather sad end of her life, of a very hectic and interesting artistic life, which we now want to lift out and show to everyone in this exhibition. So these are the main three artists, and the room is not so large. It's about 150, 200 square meters. And we start from the left here with Lily Reich and an intro there with intro and photo of her and samples of the new carpet, which is now being woven. And also a small sample that we have of the old carpet, which has not been shown before. And then we go into the next room, and to the right there we have Otti Berger. We have a chair with her zebra fabric, and we also had the child's carpet, which I showed you, which will be rewoven now in Bruneneck. They have already done one sample. And we also hope to show the snow textile there, as well as another textile called Diagonal, which has been recreated recently. And then we have various photos of her in the Bauhaus school and with her friends. The next one is Lucy Rhee. We have a big vitrine there at the end of the room with Lucy Rhee's pottery, probably about 20-30 pieces of her fabulous pottery, which Daniel has in his collection. So that has to be brought over from Geneva to Brno. And then at the last wall, there will be Annie Albers and her fabulous carpet, a fabric, and we also have a couple of other pieces in Daniel's collection, which we will show there, and also evidently her life with Joseph Albers, and there is a sort of a small drama there because Joseph Albers was also very fond of Otti Berger, so it was kind of a jealousy drama there, but they seem to be all good friends. And they never spoke badly about each other. And that was also the idea of the Bauhaus School. It was a very liberal place for encounters and friendships, and also in a way, in a sexual way, so that it was in a way a school that they would say would be up to date for what we think about an art school of today. But in fact, all the art schools today have their ideas from Bauhaus and from these fabulous artists. So thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you hugely. So that's a little bit the art exhibition that will start, and we think art has a very direct way of showing the lives of these people, which really show how they were sent to Europe at the beginning of the 20th century. They almost started there as women and of a Jewish tradition to renew it in the heart of Europe. And then their life continues, some of them to the end of the 20th century, and they recreate America. They become some of the finest artists in ceramics, in textiles, and actually in print. When you look at Annie Albers' pieces, they're extremely fine on texture and color. So we have a few of them here. So I'm going to just stop sharing for a second. We have a few of the pieces that we have here. We have some of the buttons that we're showing that people can touch. We have a carpet that we're weaving from Otti Berger so that it comes back in a little bit, some of the pieces we have. But really, Vida, maybe we'll ask you some questions. It's open to some questions. Maybe you tell us, first of all, what you see the role of art in starting from zero, maybe the title of the piece, what it means to you starting from zero, and how it's shown by these artists. And then please, anybody else with questions, please, we've got Vida here. It's wonderful to have him. Do ask questions. Vida, over to you.
Yes, the starting from zero is a quote from Annie Albers, which you could see here. Indeed, most of these artists wanted and had to start from zero, since they had to flee their own country and their homeland. That appears to Annie Albers, to Lucy Ree, and partly to Otti Berger too, because, as I said, after May 1936, until she went to Auschwitz in 1944, she had to find work outside Germany. And she, in fact, first went, and she in fact hoped to be settled in England. Quite a few of them hoped to settle in England. They had also an idea of how making a new Bauhaus in England, but they couldn't find any financial backing. And in the end, in Chicago, most of them were invited to go there and start a new Bauhaus. And they started a new Bauhaus school, which is today the Technical Institute of Design in Illinois, in Chicago. And Otti Berger was promised to be head of the weaving studio there. And Moholy-Nagy, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, who was the leader of this school, he asked her to come over, and she had great problems of getting a visa to get out of Europe at that time. She went home to Croatia, where she was born, and to help her mother, who was ill, and in the late 1930s, and tried to get a visa, couldn't get a visa, and eventually the visa came in 1941. And when that appeared, the Nazi government in Yugoslavia, they were very Nazi-friendly there, they denied her a passport. So it was actually the passport that meant that she couldn't get out of Europe. And eventually she was sent to Auschwitz with her family. Most of them died, and so did Otti, unfortunately. So that is a sad story. But the other ones, they were making a new start, and they did make it from zero, because evidently they didn't have much money, they didn't have much with them, they had to go with what they had in their hands, and they managed to start from zero in a new country because they were so talented and so advanced in their thinking about art, and that everyone admired them. And they got good positions in the new countries they came to. Annie Albers in America, and Lucy Ree in England, where she became the most famous ceramist of the 20th century. And then again, as I said, Lily Reich, unfortunately, had a disappointing end of her life with Miss van der Rohe, who had then found a new lady, and she got ill and died in 1947. So they all tried to start from zero as good as they could, and we will probably say that only Annie Albers and Lucy Ree managed successfully with that, unfortunately.
No, thank you. And it does tell the story not only of discrimination in Germany and Austria, but often how difficult it was to start again and to find a place to go, and the waves then of renewal starting in these countries. Final question for me is, we get asked from the students at the core is the testimonies and the stories, but what do you think the role of art is? How important do you think art is in being able to communicate quite directly to people the stories and also the kind of beauty of some of the work of these survivors? Vida, what do you think? How does art communicate directly? What do you think the role of art in the story of the Museum of Survivors?
Well, they are perfect examples of how it is actually possible to start from zero for all of us. In Europe today, we have many people that have to flee their own countries. When we look to Ukraine, when we look to many other parts of the world, this is still a problem around the world. And of course, it is then very encouraging to see that although it is a horrible story, some managed to make something good of it because they were talented. They knew how to move around. And we admire them today, and they are examples of the strength and the courage that we all need also today. So in a way, they are the heroes of the 20th century, these ladies.
Great. And questions from anybody else? Just please, you either put your hand up or unmute yourself. Maybe Svetlana, who's in the textile school, if you want to ask a question, because they're helping in some of the weaving of these pieces. Is there anybody else who would like to ask some questions?
Hello, everybody. I'm just in Vienna in this moment, and we are preparing the fashion school. So my students were here at the beginning, and now they had to go to make a rehearsal, because in an hour is coming to make interview with us, also the Austrian TV. So they had to go out, and anyway, I will report about everything it was said here today, and we will all sign the attendance sheet. So that's now for me, and I'm here with Tanya Shedová. She's from Moravian Gallery from Brno. She went to support us and to hear all the story, exciting story, and we are all looking forward to see the exhibition. It will be great.
Fantastic. Any questions from Hungary? Gabby, maybe over to you. Have you heard of Otti Berger? Are you intrigued by Otti Berger? Any questions you want to maybe ask from the Hungarian students to Vida? Because she's obviously, her nationality, where she was born, it changed many places, but she spoke Hungarian as her basic language. Gabby, do you want to ask any question?
I would just maybe add something. One is that we probably and hopefully are going to create a virtual iWalk program, which will follow Otti Berger's life, and we can follow her path wherever she went and wherever she created art. So that would be very exciting and strongly connected to the project and the importance of art in expressing yourself, and also art as something that connects history to people and brings it closer to us. And I think hopefully students will learn much more when they will be advancing with the testimony-based activities, the role of art in resistance, for example, that shows the importance of, again, art in terms of survival as well. And I think this it's illustrated in the Starting from Zero exhibition. So I'm very excited to see it. If anyone has questions, you can also use the chat box. Don't be afraid. If you don't want to speak, that's okay. You can write as well.
Okay, I'll leave it for a couple of seconds if anybody else wants to. Do you want to ask some questions from Geneva? People should give input. Do people think it's a good idea to show these artists in the museum? If you don't, we will. I'm afraid video will be stopped. But if you think it's a good idea, we will continue and develop some of their works. They've got a Jewish background and they happen to be women, so you can see that search for identity at the beginning of the 20th century. I think there's something very creative that they actually started from zero in the 20th century, and they formed part of modern Europe. I mean, an amazing culture which was also shattered. So it tells you a bit about the lost world of the 20s and 30s, which for my family we felt very much part of in Central Europe. That for us was where the home of our branch of the Jews was right in the core of Europe, and still is. But then they carry on and they create, they tell that story. Obviously some of them aren't able to escape, which is important to see that art can say, but some of them do carry on, and because they survive, they create our world in America. America would not look the same without Mies van der Rohe building the architecture, without Annie Albers in textiles. Many of these modern visual culture you see in advertising, you see in design. There's a book on if you have it, there's a book on the iPhone and how that comes from Bauhaus. That would be the perfect Bauhaus object. It's functional, and yes, it's discreet. It's got lines in it. Very influenced, actually. Jobs was very influenced by that world of the 20s and 30s, which the Jews helped create with German culture, with Austrian culture, with European culture. So we think it can communicate very directly. We think it's not boring, but you will have to tell us a little bit. So anybody against going forward with the art exhibition? Not yet. So I've got a question here. Have you ever considered a more technological approach inside? This is from you? Maybe you want to ask it and just explain a bit.
Well, I mean, I feel like people said that it should be boring for the foreign education. I guess.
Can't hear.
Do you want to come speak it? So he's saying we should also use technology in the museum. So art communicates directly, but also make it.
Yeah, that's great for the newer generation.
So more technological, more interactive.
Yeah, I think more interactive.
Okay, so that's a very good question, and it is in the 40 and do add to it. So a lot of what will be in the museum will be interactive, bringing alive the stories. So when you go in, you have a whole set of. So as you walk into the museum, on the right, you have what's called a testimony map of the site, where you see the gates, you see the river, you see where the ring was given, and out of that comes the stories of those people, because we have those testimonies, and we are going to work to make that as interactive as possible. On the left, you then do have a bank of screens which you can interact with, and we're trying to make it a little. You will see later on some of the testimonies where you can even ask questions. of the testimonies, and we'll one of the Zoom calls will be on the technology side, and there's then in the middle, again we have to use technology to bring alive 8 key people: Oskar Schindler, Emily Schindler, Otti Berger, Annie Albers as well. So one of the bits we had technology to use. We have to keep it simple, but we do have to bring them alive. You will try and meet those people, and we will see how best to do that. There are some constraints, but we'll see how best to do that. But we also think on the far side, and it comes a bit from the emotional part, where you can also just admire some of the art and some objects. So at the beginning of each of the screens, there will be, I'm not sure you can see here, but this is one of the bowls of the Schindler Jews that they produced in the factory. You'll see not a lot. It's not going to be full of objects, but there will be some at the beginning, because we do also think the contemplative role of art, which can transmit very directly the story, but also beauty. We will get the list from the film that was used in the film, so you will see a few of the objects as you introduce the technology. But we hear it, and it's a good piece. We have input from Vida, certainly on the importance of art and the beauty of some objects, but also it will be interactive and technological. And one of the Zoom sessions will be on an interactive testimony, and that is almost beyond us in technology, but it was a very important person, Ben Fering, who helped create international law, and they did 5 days of questions of him, and it was quite intense, with 40-50 cameras and thousands of questions. And it means now with an algorithm, you can ask him a question. You can ask him, what was it like before the war? What is your favorite color? And he still talks. So we will see how that works. And it's going to be that mixture of still some stories, which is a very ancient but powerful technology, poetry, music, art, but with this generation of technology. And we'll see how it works. Yeah, I have the Geneva School here, and they push us towards the interactive in the story and possible use of sound and maybe holograms. We have to see, but that we will see.
We had we just another question, which is partially answered by you, I think, but Chongor says here that we will see a lot of different styles of art, and will there be a distribution between different styles of art in the museum?
So it's a good question. So one of the also reasons, it's the textile factory, and the textile actually that Annie Albers used as a visa to get out, which she produced this incredibly actually you could call it technological textile that reflected on the back, changed the sound of a room, absorbed the sound, and on the front it reflected the light, so it brought it much more light. It was one of the real contributions of textiles in the 30s. For me, it's more modern than you have now. When I go to a museum, it's often beautiful visually, but the sound is terrible. You drop your keys and it reverberates. So we will try and build some of those textiles and art into the museum and the walls. So it tells the story of how she escaped, but it also is something, one that's beautiful, changes light, changes sound, and shows that the 1930s in some ways was more advanced than we are now in its design. There will be ceramics, and there'll be some art. So we will show, and Joseph Bau as well, who's done this book of poetry, which he did in the camp, on the back of cigarette pieces. Gabby will do there's a testimony on him, but we will also bring, as we did, there'll be an album of survivors, which brings his poems alive and his art. So it will be shown. So it will be textiles, it will be some ceramics, including one bowl from the original factory, and some art, including Annie Albers and the art of survivors. That's about it. We will try and build textiles. You'll see the design of the building has also got textile walls that you can open and close. You'll see a bit how they imagine museums in that period. Annie Albers wrote something on museums, so it will be quite subtle, but it will be part of what we're doing. I also must say there's limits. There's limits to technology, which is incredibly expensive. So we will have some limits, and we're lucky because we were part of that community of survivors in England. So I actually found doing the, I always knew that Lucy Ree, who's one of the great ceramicists, her family had nowhere to stay in England. They stayed with my grandmother, but it's only doing the work with Vida on this exhibition I found she is actually related and part of my family, and that's a little bit why we have some of her art, which I never knew. So you will see people who are obviously part of that culture of survivors, and then a little bit how they can continue. Very difficult, actually, the next generations, but they continue to try to shape our world, which you'll see in the film is what we're trying to also make sense of. The ring that was on the Jews, that the Jews gave Oskar Schindler, which says, if you save one life, I mean, what's the point of saving one life? But you do, in some ways, save a culture and save the world entire. It's a very difficult, challenging phrase, but we're also trying to understand it through those artists. Okay, I'll stop there. I think you're great questions. If anyone wants to say no and we don't do the art exhibition, then Vida will be disappointed. But you're welcome to say that. Any ideas, please send them back. We have two types of activities. One is just get ideas for a wider group. If you can put them to sign an attendance sheet, that's great. We reach more people. They can be very simple ideas. And then the testimony piece, which Gabby, the exercises, 45 minutes in schools, would be great to get maybe a smaller group. We get your feedback. Do they work? And then finally, a huge thank you to Vida. I think just a round of applause if people can just thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
Anika and everybody had silent clap. Vida, over to you for a last word.
Yes, thank you. Great to meet you all. My main issue is also that it's such a spiritual place, this factory at Bernenegg. We felt it all when we were all there together. It's full of spirit, and it's actually, the muses are still there from those people who left it. And now they will get a home. It will become a museum. The muses will get a home. So the art will be so strong that it's strong enough. It doesn't need the machines to show the art. But if you have it, it can enhance it. You can enhance it with video conferences as we have today, and also with showing more of their life, of course, with the internet machines and what have you. But the main point, of course, is the art and the spirit of the artists. They need a home, and that is the museum. Thank you.
So thank you, Vida. Everyone's here saying that's beautifully said, and it's a home for the muses, and they will communicate through art and through their stories. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I think hopefully you got a feeling of the spirit, both of the museum and some of those muses that Vida brought alive for the moment of for the hour of the video call. Please let's stay in touch. You've got the curriculum. Have a look at it within your schools. If you can sign the attendance sheet and provide any feedback, because making a museum, it will open 80 years since the Second World War, but it will open in a way that can communicate to you as students from countries throughout Europe, and that really is important. Huge thank you, Vida, today, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.